Hi, this is Tina Persson, coach and trainer, and you are listening to the Academics Developing Practice podcast.
Hello. In this Making an Impact Special 2024, myself and my co-host Izzy Kevan, a PGR Development Network Deputy Co-Lead, chat with Tina Persson, a certified coach, trainer and author, about how to craft effective research strategies and navigate and excel in your academic or non-academic career. We hope you enjoy. Tina, we're really pleased to be speaking with you today for this Making an Impact special about effective outreach strategies. But before we get started, could you please tell us a little bit about your background and how you have arrived at the position that you're in today?
Yeah, I'm happy to do so. And I would like to start the podcast by saying, if I sound a little bit different here today, it's because I'm sitting here in Sweden with a slight cold, so my voice is a bit shaky. But I hope I will do fine here and that you can hear me loud and clear anyway. Well, I am a scientist. My background was I postdoc 6 years in Germany in the 90s. And I basically wanted to perform a classic academic career. So I started off with so-called a TINA track. Not really that name in Sweden, but I had a group. And fairly quickly, I realized this was not really my game. And this is before internet. It could be good to know here now that the outreach strategy in those days were before LinkedIn, before Facebook, was a classical way of using mailing and calling people and going to conferences. So I wanted to transition to something completely different where I could excel myself differently. So I came over to the recruiting and headhunting business, which is completely different from academia. It's like making a turn of 180 degrees. It's much more focused on sales and etc. And I learned a lot about marketing and people business, if you put it that way. After 10 years, then back in academia, more in a service and staff function, moved to Stockholm. And there, I had a hidden dream for many years, and that was start my own company, but I never really had the courage. I'm not coming from an academic family. I don't have this sort of risk taking in myself. But at that time in Stockholm, living in a one-room flat, I said, okay, now maybe it's the time. So I started my own business, which was at the time a coaching business and a training business, educational company 8 years ago. So from there, now I'm running my own business, both career leadership, strategies in general. And of course, my business is changing due to the environment in the world is changing. So I would say today, I really try to thrive and help people to thrive in a fast changing world driven by technology and AI.
So just tell us a little bit more about that company that you started when you went back to Stockholm then. Was that, did you manage to pick up customers from Germany where you were before? Have you got an international or European base of customers? How is it going?
Thank you. It's a really good question because, the reason I could start my business so quickly was that I was an early adopter. I am, as a person, an early adopter. And I'm a futuristic person. I try to connect the dots. What's going to happen in the future? So what I did when I worked as a recruiter, you do a lot of sales. But at that time, I worked at a classic company called Manpower. Not really fitting me. But what did I learn was I built a network and I learned a lot about LinkedIn. So I joined LinkedIn 2008, 2009, and I just saw this huge potential that, wait a minute, I'm not dependent on the big professors or certain people. I can actually reach out and connect and build my own network if I nurse it. So I started to build my network on LinkedIn. So when I came to Karolinska Institute and I worked in a staff position, I continued to build my network. So when I decided to build my company, I already had a platform where I could start to sell my business. That was one. Number two, which maybe is even more important, and that is part of outreach, where the name was not outreach at the time. That is that when you work with sales and marketing, you knock doors. and you learn to ask questions to people, what they need. And I learned very, very quickly that most companies, they didn't understand PhDs and postdocs, that value they could offer. So I thought, here is a gap, because it is the PhDs and the postdocs that in the end need to take much more responsibility to express in their marketing materials, CV, LinkedIn, and whatever, to explain the value they can offer to the companies. And I thought, that's where I'm going to be a coach. That is where I'm going to develop my own training programs. So Matt and Isabel, most of my training programs I have developed myself based on that I am professor or assistant professor, and I worked as a salesperson. So I figured out there is a gap. And that was my unique value I could offer very, very quickly. It was a very narrow field, but big enough on European level that I could earn money on. That was the start, if I put it that way.
That's so interesting. I'm just curious, when you said that the companies aren't aware of the value that PhDs and postdocs could contribute. Is that something that's changed now? Do you think companies in general starting to get more of an understanding of the value of PhDs and postdocs as they, dare I say, become slightly more popular or maybe more common than they once were? Or do you think that's something that still needs to be worked on and kind of shown off?
I would put it this way, that when I started, there was sort of a huge gap. There's still a gap, but it's the understanding from the company side has improved a lot. And I would say that if I coach a PhD and a postdoc today, they stayed in academia or academic context for a while, the general transition is 6 to 8 months. And that is fast. That is normal if they are coachable. Mm-hmm. And the companies are happy to take them. The thing, what companies are afraid of is that when you apply for a job, the company think, does this person really understand what the job is about? So before you start to apply, before you start to approach, that you at least figure out your natural talents, whether you go for a more clerical job or if you go for a creative job or an enterprising job or a practical job. So you roughly know the work field that you will move into. So, and no one is a perfect fit. And I say today, when I meet PhDs and postdocs, they are too much towards, I need to be a perfect fit. And if you are a perfect fit, it's no point to take the job because then you already done it. You were not a perfect fit when you started your PhD. You need to take a job where you also can grow. So this is also something that I know I get feedback from recruiters and companies, because that's where I also have my network, because I'm a coach there as well. The biggest mistake is if you jump into a position on a level that you consider is too low for you and you don't know why you take the job. There is a big difference if you take the job and you're fully aware of, I most likely will be a little bit bored, but it doesn't matter because I'm a man or a woman that is on a mission. So I stay here and focus on learning skills and growing my network. And what most PhDs and postdocs really need to train inside a company, that is emotional intelligence and adaptability. And of course, some of the technical skills, but that we are trained to do. That's the least problem. So I would say that, yes, they are very attractive, but it's all about the mindset you have when you start the job, and that you need to take the responsibility, explore what is your own natural talents. So it's a little bit different than when I started, and that's now many years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Sort of seeing your first job as a stepping stone almost to, your first job post PhD doesn't necessarily have to be your forever job or your final job. And
absolutely no. And you shouldn't tell the future employer that I see this as a step in, because they're going to look at it and say, we're not paying you to see this as a step in. We want a person that, the company's paying you to do something. So you need to sort of understand that, okay, this is a job and it's not going to be maybe the most interesting job, but I'm going to deliver to the company and I'm going to learn. Yeah. And this is a mindset that you need to have. to sometimes, actually, I'm going to be very honest and say, since I'm coaching people in exactly coming back to me in this situation here, I said, do you know what? I think you should be bored in the job. So you learn to be bored in the job and elaborate your spare time activities instead. Yeah. So you don't have to work, 200% in your job. It's good enough to do 80 maybe or 75 and be a nice guy to work with. A nice guy to work with is a person that starts to work and the team like to work with. So they refer you later on to another position, maybe. That's important. Being a nice guy.
That's so interesting. That's so refreshing as well to hear. I think a lot of the sort of mentality nowadays is they kind of sort of romanticize the idea of a job and thinking that, your job has to be sort of life and things like that. But the idea that you should be bored that's definitely something that it's really interesting to hear you say that. And the value of being a nice person as well to work with. It's really, really good to know, I think.
It's like running your own company. You have boring days as well. It's not always fun, So, but, this is that we are PhDs and postdocs and academically trained people. We're driven by passion. So we go in and maybe a little bit idealistic as well. But all of this is coachable. It's just, the expectation level that we have. And it's amazing to see people that actually lower their expectations, but they grow in the job in the next 3 years. It's funny, Tina. I actually, I thought it was really important to work 200% and, be the best of the best. But there are other factors like emotional intelligence that really, really are important to be successful in a workplace today. Another thing that is important is that you understand your job from a perspective that when you start to work, this is my position. I'm going to deliver on this position. It's not so that I'm sitting all over. I have a mission in that job and a position in that job. So you see the difference between your private you and the profession you have in the company, and that you understand the wider ecosystem around you. And for that, you must be able to build relationships. You must be able to motivate the people around you, give and take feedback. And that's not always easy. We know how it is. I know how it is to take bad feedback. I can sit and wait for that meeting half an hour and be worried about what they're going to say now. So I have to take and digest this bad feedback. Maybe I don't even know what to do with the feedback, but I have to take it.
That's really nice to know. I think I'll keep that in mind. And I mean, I'm only a first year PhD student, but I'll keep that in mind.
With your supervisor, it's the same thing,
Yeah.
Understand your supervisor's position, and so it's also part of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, no, definitely. So being a first year PhD student, I've got to say this whole idea of outreach and things like that was quite a novel term for me. So I'm sure there's many other people, hopefully some are listening now, that are wondering what an actual outreach strategy is. So if you could maybe give us sort of an outline of what an outreach strategy is, and also why it's important in terms of research as well.
So I've been thinking a lot about this question because it's so broad. It really depends on what is it you want. What is the goal with the outreach? Is it because you want to show your abilities and skills as a PhD for the future career, or is it so that you like to target your research? Because in the old days we went to conferences writing articles, but today you have so many more medias where you can record videos, you can have, as I said, your own YouTube channel, you can have Instagram, and you can have Facebook, whatever channels you choose to have to show your research. So I would like to say is, what kind of outreach strategy would you both like to focus on? Is it the career perspective or is it the research perspective? Maybe so we focus on one and then we can discuss the other one as well. What do you both think, Isabel or Matt?
I know for me personally, obviously, I'm just starting out in my PhD. So for me, I think research will more relevant for myself, but if there's other people
Yeah, and I like the career one, but it's just so we have expectations here. Because if you start and you want to have a research base, which, if I understand you, you want to spread the knowledge about the research you do by using different sort of channels. So it's again, what kind of audience are you targeting? That needs to be number one. Remember, we are living in a digital world, and this is a challenge for all companies and every influencer in the world. That is, if I just open the channel and spreading out on LinkedIn, very few people actually will read my post. So you need to be targeted. Who is your audience? Is it researcher in the same community that you are? Because then you can create groups around that. You create hashtags, and you have to use the skills and keywords, because everything today is around skills and keywords. And then, of course, it's very good to be futuristic. And this has been my challenge. I'm very futuristic. So I started to spread out my knowledge on all sorts of channels. It was just that the PhDs and postdocs, they were not on the channels. They were not on LinkedIn. They were not on YouTube. They didn't check it. So I said, Tina, we don't find any information. So I had to teach you. You have to go to LinkedIn. You have to search YouTube. You have to check here, because people like me, we are fighting to share material with you. So this is important when you start your strategy. Where is my target group? Are they on what channels are they? That must be number one. And then the next is, what is it I want to share with them? And I usually tell, when people ask me, that if you're not very familiar with all sorts of channels, focus on two. And then you start. And now I'm saying something because I heard here, we can always edit a podcast and we can check. And I said, you have to start. It doesn't have to be perfect. And this is why I do my PhD career stories. And I say, it doesn't have to be perfect, because if I do a perfect job, I know the PhDs and they sit in doing everything perfect. And then we don't publish because it's going to take ages. Yeah. And I say, that's not a good strategy, because you need to practice. You need to train. To be in front of the camera like this can take some time. And I know that, which I really say, use this one. Start and record a video, blah, blah, blah. And then, oops, didn't really work. Then click, click, click. And then you do it again. So you can improvise, maybe from your lab. You just want to say something very quickly. If it's just so that you want to reach out and show, hey, happy Friday. I'm still in my lab doing my research. Here you can see what I'm doing. On Monday, I will actually share something very interesting with you on this and this channel. You don't need to do more. If it is so that you like to communicate with the specific target group. So number one, where is the target group? Because there's no point to be on channels where they are not. Then, of course, you can train them. It's going to take a while, though. Number two, if it is your research that you want to communicate, is it for a specialized audience or for the broader audience? Because then you have to modify the way you express it. So for your target group that are researchers themselves, you can talk science. But if it's for a general audience, you need to change the way you express it. And maybe do some very nice videos or presentations that are more easy to understand. So you are in that way communicate what you are doing. So this is, back to strategy. And this is a very basic strategy of thinking, but it's a very important start. And this is what every company is fighting with. And I fight with it too. I want to target now my PhDs. Where are they? And the thing is, what are you Googling? And this is my challenge when I put in what kind of hashtags and skills and keywords do I need to write so you actually find my post and you find me.
So just on that, I was curious, from a sort of PhD perspective, how would you go about finding out where your audience is? You're saying you need to know where it is and things like that. And once you've found it, that's great. You can sort of focus all of your output on that channel or that platform. So if you're a sort of PhD student starting out, maybe your target audience is sort of companies or other PhD students.
Absolutely.
Or people
You can hashtag companies, you can, put in these different skills and hashtag things. And again, I think YouTube is a fantastic channel. Video is the fastest growing media. So I want researchers to be much more on YouTube, and also do quick and fix, reels, shorter things. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I would love researchers, and this is my opinion, that could just record. They have published this wonderful article, and that, no one understands it apart from very specialized people. And that you took that result and findings and recorded a video elevator pitch of 2-3 minutes and send it out. And then you can hang the article on it. That's a very nice way of showing your results for a broader audience, and that you will also learn to do what we have been fighting with for so long, translate this article to a language that more people understand. And I really challenge some of my clients, please, could you start just record a little bit more a video? Doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah, you don't have to look good either. I think it would be a big relief if people could see a scientist from home or from the lab or just from the office where they can see things like this, for example. Just start doing it and then say, okay, I go for my research.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think the world we live in is very much a content creator environment nowadays. And obviously a lot of that is due to changes to social media and things like that. So I'm assuming you would say that has social media has certainly impacted the way that researchers need to consider their strategy.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And also to reach out to people. We can see that during the corona pandemic, where so many people call themselves scientists say, researchers say, experts say, and it was fake. It was people reading articles from scientists, and they actually didn't understand really what was in the article, because they take everything, this sounds crazy, as fact, but we know as a scientist, this is my finding. It doesn't have to be the absolute truth, because now it's time for other scientists to criticize it and see if this is, and when a journalist go in and read, they can write it as a big discovery and this is the truth. And here I think it is super important that scientists take charge of this huge flow of information that I see might not be always communicated in the best way. But if you as a scientist say that this is the findings and this is how we have done it, then at least you have given an alternative to the other fake news that's on the media. And I fully respect scientists that are afraid to do it, because it means you will be exposed for a broader audience of people. Before, scientists could hide more on conferences, and we felt very we could have tough, hard arguments on conferences, but we were used to that because we didn't feel judged. If I presented my data on a conference, I never felt judged, but I could have a professor arguing about how I did it and how I found it to test if I knew what I was doing, and testing. And also me, I had to use my brain to see, have I been thinking in the right way? This is science. But when you talk with a broader audience, you have to be aware of you can be judged. And I think this is what researchers and scientists need to take control over more in the future, and therefore need to go out with their findings much more to the general public, and in that way take charge of their outreach strategy and their findings. This is what I believe and think. Yeah.
So earlier you sort of mentioned that people needed to kind of choose who their audiences were, sort of whether you were going to more researcher or more broad general public. Do you think researchers have a responsibility almost to do both, so that the audience, the general public, are sort of more aware and more educated on their findings and less kind of vulnerable to the fake news phenomenon?
To the fake news and stuff. This is a very good question, and this is something that I'm going to debate when in Zurich when I go there. What is the responsibility? And I think that needs to be something, a policy from the university. But consider, if you, let's say, if you are a professor, you are running a group, the professor need to have a strategy. how much can my PhDs and postdocs go out maybe on a YouTube video and record the article? Yeah, I think that could be good, because a PhD student is still a student. Is it correct to say that a PhD student is a scientist? Not really. And this is something I have noticed. I'm a scientist now, you're a PhD student, I say. So, and now we come in here to sort of policies, but there needs to be some policies here. And the professors can't hide from the fact that we have YouTube and social media, and that maybe in the future needs to be channel and a strategy, an outreach strategy for the whole scientific group. So what is the professor then maybe in charge of, and what can PhD student, postdocs and other researchers actually do on the platforms with his name and with the group name and with the university name? I think it's really important that you have different ways. So I, as a PhD student, I'm in charge of doing certain things if I want to. But, what I communicate with and to whom. And this is strategy. And that goes a little bit higher up and down. Yeah. Because I think at the moment, and many with me agree with that, it's actually a little bit wild and crazy. So we say experts say and scientists say. Yeah. But is it really a full scientist? And I can share with you that I gave that feedback. And it was deadly silent when I said, yes, but you are not a scientist, you're a PhD student. And it is your professor that actually is responsible for what you say on the internet.
Just on that and on that strategy, Tina, what would you say about the comments? So there's various people, podcasters, influencers or people who are successful on social media who talk about staying out of the comments. What would your strategy be on that? Because obviously there's a lot of fake accounts. There's some
fake accounts.
Yeah, and there's some sort of accounts that are there to almost create social angst between different groups. They're designed to do that. Yeah. So what would your advice be on that?
Oh, this is very good. This is why I think you need a strategy here. So, and that in the old days, we had a journal. So you could go to the journal and you could hide. Yeah, you got an email. You didn't have to read it, if I put it that way. But you got emails in the old days. I got, and it was not really nice, but the world didn't see my emails, and I could be offended on a conference, but it was still a limited group that offended me. Today, you have, as you say here very clearly, you're exposed. And I can't give a right and wrong answer, but there is a reason why people close down the comments, because there are too many sort of, what we call them troll in Sweden, people that has just as a job to go in and destroy. And this is why, there needs to be a strategy, because I still believe that scientists need to come out on other channels with their findings, but also that be very aware of when we do it, what risk do we take, what kind of plans do we have around it. If my PhDs and postdocs goes out, whose responsibility is it? That need to be a strategy from the university. But I don't think that we in the future, and let's say, can avoid it, because we have sort of, if I have an article and I publish it, it must be possible for me to, have a maybe fireside chat or a podcast in which I discuss the findings like we do here today. But it's obviously that some people will misuse it. It must also be possible for me to talk with a PhD student, about their life and their research and etc. But we need to have some sort of policy around it. I completely agree. And I also stretch it for one professor, and I know I'm a futuristic person, remember that. And when I wrote, and I was a scientist, I found it so boring to write articles, because I always start in the same way, introduction and all blah, 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 and all the tables in the end, I thought, gosh. So I thought, why can't I just publish the result? And take my electronic book in a file and export it somewhere, because it's not secret, that's not the point with publishing. And so I said, why not then just have an article as a YouTube? I present my data on a 1 hour YouTube channel. Here's my findings. And then I take my protocols and add that to the YouTube or somehow. That was big silence, because I think then we would have different scientists from the one that love to write. There are scientists that are not really keen on writing, and there are scientists that are much better on talking about their findings. So I just want to highlight that. What's wrong with that? Yeah, to have nature on YouTube, or nature on another tube channel or whatever. Why not? And AI can transcript it anyway, and I can read from the paper or whatever. So yeah, I think this sort of outreach strategy in the modern world will be different, I think, than from the old one. Going to a conference, have my limited people, friends and family, and then publishing in an article looking for citations, because that is the old strategy. It doesn't have to disappear, but the future is more, we say social media, but YouTube and other channels with videos and films is another way of actually showing your research. And more people will be exposed, for good and for bad, as you say, Matt. For good or bad.
I think as my thesis looms ever more closer, I would very much be on board with a YouTube video instead of a 1,000-page document.
1,000-page document, and think about it. You could be a rock star in a YouTube. Show yourself with different clothings. You can, each chapter has a different. You could really express your science differently in a YouTube. I agree with you. It would be very interesting if that could be a reality.
Definitely. Hopefully in my PhD lifetime, fingers crossed.
Yeah, considering how fast the world is turning, just ChatGPT. You probably use ChatGPT, all of you, but I started a year ago, and I can write a full workshop from idea to have all the materials for breakout rooms, PowerPoint slides, content in 3 hours with the help of ChatGPT. It's ridiculous. It took 3-4 days before. So why should it take so long time to write down a thesis? Honestly.
Yeah, ChatGPT is definitely a really, really valuable resource. Are there any other sort of key points that you have that researchers should sort of consider when they're kind of developing their own outreach strategy?
I think, first of all, I think you should do things that you feel comfortable with. If it is so that you absolutely prefer writing, that can be blogging and writing on different platforms. You have Substack and other sort of channels where you can reach out in a written way. We shouldn't forget that. Then I like to challenge researchers to start recording some videos. And you don't need to be perfect, just start. And that the tip is that you start training using your iPhone. You don't have to have all the perfect equipment. It doesn't really cost much. You just use what you have, and then you test on something that you feel comfortable with. Whether that is to say, this is my life as a PhD in the lab. You don't have to share your research. You can just show your life. I'm going to build a story how I, go to my work. In your case, maybe the lab. And here's my daily day, Monday, Tuesday. And you have a short sort of story that will, in the end, be a book of your life as a PhD student. That is one way of starting. And then when you do that and you get more and more used to it, then I would say, then you start to think about the target group, because then you have started to get used to be on video or start to write about things. So you actually get a little bit of response maybe. And then, okay, if I now think about it, what target group do I feel comfortable with? Is it to stay within my comfort zone with the people that I know are like me, or is it more, broaden the room of people in the event, so to speak? I see it always as an event. Is it my group or is it more people in the room? This is how I tell my people, when I coach them, start with something, because if we don't feel comfortable, we don't start, I still remember my first video And it was my coach that forced me. And I had a manuscript, blah, 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 and I was reading it. It was so boring. So, of course, no one watched the video. But for me, it was a huge step just to see my face on LinkedIn and hearing my own voice. There was absolutely no likes. But it's not important because that video is forgotten today. So fast is also the digital world. Actually, not that many people in the beginning see what you do. So it's better to sort of start. And you can always change your strategy. So you said, should I have? Yeah, but maybe you in the beginning like to share your life as a PhD or postdoc in the lab. And then, no, maybe I should have more career focus on it. And then you can do that. Or if you talk with your professor and say, how can you know? Because I think this is important when you start to talk about your research, that your professor or responsible people actually agree on it. Otherwise, it could be bad. So they maybe say, okay, what can I share about my research without actually sharing too much? Yeah, it's good to have an understanding, I think. I have heard of couples that, the professor were not really keen on it until I told the professor, but honestly, these people are pulling people to your lab. What? By your PhD student talking about the life in your lab and the science you do in the lab, they actually expose your lab and attract people. Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm going to talk with them. That was really good mind. So suddenly, he realized maybe I should be on the channel too. No, I think it's a very good idea. And you maybe could share the videos from your PhDs as well and say, wow, this is my PhD student. Look what they're doing in my lab. Of course, you attract PhDs and postdocs to the lab because they get an insight into what the life is in your group. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think a few people can resonate with, especially because I know that there are some sort of industry funded PhDs as well.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Industry might be
more hesitant
of what they can sort of post. Are there any tips for sort of people in that position of what, if they had to sort of stay clear of the actual content of their research, what kind of content they might put out
they need to clarify that with the company, what they can share and not, so they don't run into any challenges. That is how I see it. Mm-hmm. And that can be depending on the company actually and their policies. Yeah. But, there have been a little bit wild and crazy for the one universities. And there, I think, that's why I say stick to the universities need to have policies, and it's good to bring the professor with you. If you don't have the professor with you, focus on yourself and your career, something that doesn't impact your professor then and the research he's doing. And then see it with time, people change. But companies that I can't advise, you really need to clear it with the company.
Yeah. And of course, once, we have sort of publications of results, then you're able to share this anyway.
Yeah. Then you can share it. As long as not IP, So intellectual properties and so you need to take care of.
Yeah, of course. Are there any different things to consider with an outreach strategy depending on what your actual career plans are?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're going to stay in science and you're moving towards a full career as a professor, I think you should have a strategy for it. This is new. We are walking on absolutely new grounds for most professors. Many young professors, I think, will feel very comfortable. The futuristic professors already started. The younger generation, they are on TikTok already. It's going to be much more natural for them to expose themselves on social media. It is more the universities. It takes longer for these institutions to keep track on the policies and the development. But I think and believe, and maybe you can cut this out, but I think the university, you need to push the universities a bit. Yeah, they need to be pushed that, we need to change. The whole educational field is sort of need to change because the technological advancement with AI and all that is moving really, really fast. So with the younger professors, there will be changes, I think, I hope. If not, there can be a risk that these younger people say, no, we can't stay at the university. It's lacking behind here. Yeah, it's boring. I can't really express myself and my science in the way I want. Yeah, it could be a risk.
Yeah.
If you choose to have a career beyond the academic context, you should absolutely have a strategy. And this is what I train many, many, many of my clients to have. Start early on figuring out what you're looking for. And you can, and remember though, that when you start and everything you put on the internet stays on internet. Yeah. So be aware of that. And then when you want to look for a career beyond, you need to sort of have a strategy on LinkedIn and how you write your resumes, all of that, application branding. That's also part of outreaching, where you, of course, sell what you want to do in the future, not what you have done in the past. This is the difference. So it's two completely different strategies if you want to stay in academia or if you want to leave. And my tip here now for you, Isabel, is as a PhD here now, don't think about that next step too early. You are too worried about the future because there's so many things happening. So we really don't know what's going on. When you enjoy your PhD, have fun during your PhD, just stay a little bit up to date with all the technology advancement. And then when time comes, you take charge of it. And this is how I see my PhD time. I think that looking back, when I did my PhD, I had much more fun. I didn't worry so much. Mm-hmm. Of course, worried when I was unemployed, but I fixed it. It's no point to start a PhD and then, worry about what's going to happen in the next 2-3 years. I think it's too early. Enjoy the PhD, have fun, and meet people and laugh and finish it. And your PhD doesn't have to be perfect. It can be good enough. It's more important what you actually learned during your PhD, that you had fun, and that you met some great people, and you were building a network, than having a perfect PhD.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's my feedback, And then the next step, now it's about the next step. That should be fun to figure out. It's about opening doors, and there's so many different pathways that the PhD can take today. Mm-hmm. So I haven't met many PhDs that are unemployed for very long, if there is a reason. Yeah. So enjoy it more. That's my tip. Yeah, enjoy the time.
Excellent. I'll definitely take that on board. I'm sure there are some sort of people who are less fortunate to be a first-year PhD or fourth-year PhD listening in. So at what stage might you suggest that they start to think about outreach strategies and things like that? At what point? Because obviously it all sort of comes to a head in their last year. They're thinking, I need to write my thesis, I need to finish all my data. And also think about the next step. So how would you sort of avoid it all sort of coming at the same point?
Clashing in the end. It's always going to clash in the end. But I would say that if you take any job, whether it's a PhD or any job, you should always invest 10% for career development. 10%. That means that when there are 6 months left of your contract, you can press the button. Because you have a LinkedIn profile, you have added people, you have the templates for CV, which means that you have learned how to use ChatGPT, writing a motivational letter. You have templates from canva.com. You know how to tailor a job ad to a CV. You have a rough idea about the labor market. But more importantly, you maybe even know where you're going to live. Are you going to live in London, Manchester, Scandinavia, Germany? Because that's the first step. You need to know where you're going to live. Otherwise, the job search is going to be very weird. You are all over the space. So invest from the beginning. Enjoy your PhD. Invest 10% just to stay up to date with all these sort of tools. And if you do that, when there's 6 months left, you are ready to press the button, to send applications. Just go out there and investigate. Then you don't sit there 6 months before. I have no LinkedIn. I have no CV template. I don't know where. I don't know where I'm going to live. That's confusing. But it's because you didn't do anything the other years. It's only 10% of your time. So if you think about that, that's what you should do for the rest of your life. Every person that works or have a work should invest 10% of the time. So they work 90, 10% of that is about, career development. And that is the only difference I noticed. And I've been coaching people now for 8 years. And I can hear, why he or she got a job so fast. Yeah. 2 ways, I said. Either you're very lucky or they just invested that time before. It's usually the other one.
Yeah.
It's not lucky. You can be lucky. Most people have actually invested the time a little bit earlier than you have. Yeah.
You see it on LinkedIn, don't you? I see it where somebody's probably at that stage where they're looking for a new post. They're looking, they might be looking outside of their sector, and they become incredibly active on LinkedIn. Their account has almost been dormant for a number of years, and then all of a sudden they're commenting, posting, reposting, and it's because they're, it's all come to a head, and they're now investing.
To a head, yeah.
Yeah, instead of investing 10%, like you've said, over time, they're investing 90% in 4 months.
Yes, all over, sunny and I. Yeah. No, that is exactly what I mean. And this is also what companies do wrong. That, say, I have to be on all channels, and blah, blah, blah. You get burned out when you run a company. Hey, you need a strategy. Posting once a week is fine. I haven't posted now for 4 weeks, but it's okay because I know that happened there. And then, if I just start posting one blog, maybe one that, and then I can have a shorter one, that's fine. Twice a week. And people that comment a lot, you have to think about if they can comment that much, they probably have very little to do. Yeah, because there's no way I can't follow it and comment on everyone. But if you have a strategy that you maybe twice a week, just scroll a bit. And you decide also that these people, I like to go in and comment, that's fine. But for a job search, it's not important. That's the wrong strategy to expose you like that. No, you can be behind the back. Important for a job searcher, if you're going to make a career development, is to focus on, one, expand your network. So you connect with people in companies. And if you start hysterically doing that because you don't have a network, you're going to be disappointed because it's maybe only 10% that actually accept you. Because if you are sharing a lot hysterically and you have a very narrow little network, there's very few people that see it anyway. So one, from now, everyone that listen now to this here, now you take this one here, and then when you are commuting, connect. That was 5 people. And then you do the same the next day. So you sort of build up. And then after a while, you can be more strategic. What companies, and so you expand your network. And good to connect with is people like me, because I have a huge network. So just by adding me, you get huge network. After that, then you start strategically just to goose people and check people's profile. So you learn, there's a PhD from Liverpool. Where are they? Now I'm going to track them down here. Oh, it's working here. And oh God, he's doing that now. And the first job and that job title. So you actually only check around. You don't have to do anything. Because when you are checking around, you learn job titles. You are learning where people from Liverpool, where are they? Where are the PhDs in UK? Where are they working? What companies are most likely there to bring me on as a PhD? And that's super important. Otherwise, you can end up with applying for a job. You have this background, you have this title, and you apply and you're disappointed. And then I, as a career coach, go in, I check the company, and I say, do you know what? They never recruited a PhD ever. So why should they take you? That's waste of time. Oh, yeah. Check it. Check people that give you advice. What has these people done? What's their background? They criticized my CV. Go in and check. First step, expand your network. Connect with people in industry. Start to figure out, am I going to stay in UK? No, I'm going to Germany. Wow. Then you need to connect with people in Germany and build your network in Germany. When you do that, and as Isabel, first year PhD, and you build that for 2-3 years, it's going to be so much easier for you. So this sharing and liking, you don't need to do that if you have that little network. So when you are ready to go and you know what you want, you have that one-page resume, and you can start to contact people on LinkedIn. Hi, moving to Berlin. By the way, I have this resume here. What are you going to recruit in the future? Anyone like me for my competence? Or do you know anyone? But you can't do that if the network is that small. That's, for me, a smart strategy. So a lot on LinkedIn in my world, if I'm not active, my LinkedIn is open every day, but I communicate with the email and behind the back, but people don't see that I'm communicating with people. And that's what you should do in the beginning.
Thanks, Tina. So this podcast is called the Developing Practice Podcast, and we always like to finish in this same way, where we get our guests to give us 3 or 4 take-home tips in terms of things that our listeners can reflect on in terms of their own practice. So if you can boil, and you've given us so much already, but if you can boil those down into maybe 3 or 4 tips, what would they be?
Yeah, I would say that number one is, I try to include both the career perspective beyond and the internal research perspective. But number one is really that the purpose of the outreach strategy. Is it for me expanding my network and sort of reaching people beyond the academic context? Or is it, that I'm going to be, internally channeling my research? In both cases, you need to know the target group and the purpose. So that is number one. My number 2 tip is very simple, actually. Keep it simple. Don't strive for perfection. A lot about these outreach strategies is that you need to start to record a video. You just have to do that. You need to feel how it is to share it. And my 3rd tip is just do it. But when doing it, that if it's an internal strategy, that you check the policies and regulations that we discussed in the group here. If it's for your career, that is your own responsibility towards yourself. Then I say, just do it. Just go out there and test it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tina. Thanks, Izzy. That was a great conversation.
Thank you very much.